very general points and a few very specific points in random order. First of all, I just want to react to many speakers who have referred to the tribals as men who have picked up a gun and who are separate from the Maoists. There is a great amount of error in all of this. First of all, 50% or 45 to 50% of the Maoist armed cadre are women. Secondly, 100% of the armed cadre are tribals. So this kind of separation of tribals and Maoists is a bit artificial, which is not to say that all tribals are Maoists, but certainly 99.9% of the Maoists are tribals. So that is just one clarification I wanted to make. Let me try and look at how India, that calls itself a democracy, is dealing with all of this in terms of how its institutions function. In a way, if you look back to the late 80s and early 1990s, what happened was that following the war in Afghanistan, when capitalism won its jihad against Soviet communism, obviously India aligned itself with the US, and the Indian government opened two locks. One was the lock of the Babri Mazjid, and one was the lock of the market, of the Indian market. And both these ushered in two kinds of totalitarianism, an economic totalitarianism and a nationalist, religious, Hindutva kind of totalitarianism. And both these sort of, at the end, manufactured two kinds of terrorism: Islamist terrorism and red terror, which, as you can see from the media, are used, one is cranked up and the other is cranked down whenever you want. But basically what you have is a situation in which the establishment and the established opposition are both right-wing, which takes care of a lot of noise. Then you have a situation in which corporatization of natural resources has led to a scandalous situation. All of you are aware of the scandals of Madhukoda and the Reddy brothers in Karnataka, where within the period of just a few years they were making thousands of crores, millions and millions of dollars. That scandal was reported in the papers extensively. What was never reported was who gave them that money. Which of the corporations were giving out that money? Where did they get that kind of money from? If you look at the economics that underlies the mining sector in India, which is what is driving this growth rate big time, there's a report called the Lokayukta report that has just come out of Karnataka. It's more or less been suppressed because if it was made public, there would be a conflagration. But basically, that report says that for every ton of iron ore, the Indian government makes 27 rupees as profit, minusing the expenses. The private corporation makes 5,000 rupees. Translate this into millions of tons. We are talking about billions of dollars. And those billions of dollars are not just, they're not just for cancer hospitals and universities and so on that, companies like Vedanta are starting in the name of corporate social responsibility. Those billions of dollars can buy governments. They can buy elections. They can buy courts. They can buy the media. This is what we are living with, the best democracy that money can buy. That's how it functions now. So you have a situation in which one of the poorest countries in the world, where most of the people are living below the poverty line, where 100,000 farmers have committed suicide, has the most expensive elections in the world, more expensive than the United States. Where does that money come from? Who sponsors those elections? At a time when this morning 63 people died in a stampede to get 20 rupees. Where does that money come from? It comes from the mountains of Orissa, from the bauxite mountains of Orissa, from the iron ore of Chhattisgarh, from the iron ore in Karnataka. That's where it comes from. And that money then is used to subvert democracy in ways that all of us have been talking about. You have a situation where now a country that markets itself as a democracy, that is considered the best financial destination in the world, more or less, is now announcing a war against its own people. But, I mean, it's a terrible thing that it's doing, but it's not the first time it's doing it. Look back at this country's history. From the day it became independent, it began to colonize its own people. In 1947, it bombed Nagaland. Nagaland, Manipur, Assam, Kashmir, Punjab, Telangana, Hyderabad, Goa, Naxalbari, Birbhum, North Telangana. It's just been endless war, endless military intervention on its own people. Whatever own means, I mean, it's not better if it's your own or if it's someone else's people. But the point is that using military solutions to solve political problems is not new. But if you look at this list carefully, a very horrible thing appears. And that is that look at the names of the conflicts I have named. You see an upper caste Hindu state making war on tribals, on Christians, on lower caste, on Sikhs, and of course on Muslims all the time. That's what's another aspect of what's going on here. Now, you coming down to this issue of violence. All of us have said that in the name of defeating Maoism, they are attacking the tribals. I think there's a bit of subterfuge here on both sides, because I don't know what you mean by Maoist. No one has defined that. I mean, the police report against Kobat Gandhi defined the PUCL and the PUDR and the Association Against Displacement and Prisoners' Rights, and all these people are Maoists. When I was in Dantewada, the SP of Dantewada showed me photographs of 17 people that had been killed in Singharam village, and he said, see ma'am, these are Maoists, my boys have killed them. I said, maybe they are, but how do you expect me to see from a photograph? He said, look, they have malaria medicines and Dettol bottles and things from outside. So that, for him, defined a Maoist. In actual fact, if you know how that organization is structured, I actually don't know how the government decides who is a Maoist, because they have women's organizations, they have children's organizations, they have agricultural organizations, they have local militias, they have area militias, and then they have what is called the PLGA. So, in effect, if you want to, quote unquote, wipe out the Maoists, which is the kind of genocidal language that is being used, you are actually talking about killing lakhs, if not millions of people. So who is a Maoist? I mean, how is the government going to wipe this out? In 1970, in Naxalbari, from the time of Naxalbari, if you look at how the government has dealt with the Maoist issue, it has followed a kind of policy of extermination. But the movement has always come back stronger, better equipped, more politically organized. Because it's not people, it's an ideology. It's a fight against a different kind. It's an imagination fighting a different kind of imagination. That's what it is. And you cannot wipe it out in military ways. Then, if you come to the question of violence, people ask me, do you support violence? If you go to Chhattisgarh, if you go to a village in the forest, in the middle of the night. The darkness of a village night is something that people in cities can't imagine. Imagine that. Imagine a platoon of 300 to 1,000 policemen arriving, marching through the night, surrounding that village, raping and burning and killing. What are they to do? Can they go on a hunger strike? Actually, they're hungry anyway, so I don't know how they're going to hunger strike. Can they have a satyagraha? Who is listening to them? What are they supposed to do, those people? So, it's really not up to us to decide what kind of resistance somebody over there should adopt or not adopt and press our morality on them. Which is not to say that, the Maoists have never done anything wrong. Which is not to say a lot of the opinion about Maoists today is generated or extrapolated from what they did in the 70s in West Bengal or what they did in Andhra, and they did plenty wrong. But the question is, what is going on today? Does anybody know? So, on the issue of talks and the Home Minister, and a lot of us have looked up the dictionary about what exactly abjure means. I don't know, but anyway. But I just want to say that the Home Minister, Mr. Chidambaram, in his previous career as a corporate lawyer, was the non-executive director of the Board of Governors of Vedanta, which is a mining company which is in a lot of trouble for human rights violations. Almost every day it's in the news. The Norwegians pulled out of it, the Church of England pulled out of it. The Supreme Court did a very interesting thing. It sent a committee to study the forest around Niyamgiri where Vedanta is mining. The Supreme Court study said that it should not be allowed to mine there. But Justice Kapadia of the Supreme Court, listening to the case, said, okay, we won't give the license to Vedanta, we'll give it to Sterlite, because I have shares in Sterlite, omitting to mention that Sterlite belongs to Vedanta, and allowed the mining to go ahead. So these are the ways in which our institutions are being subverted. Mr. Chidambaram, who worked for Vedanta, resigned from the board of directors the day he became finance minister. One of the first things that happened was foreign direct investment clearance for Vedanta. As the Home Minister, and even when he was finance minister, he said that his vision for India was that 85% of India should live in cities, which would mean 500 million people should be moved off their land, which would mean that you need a Home Minister and a police force that's almost an army to back that. And that's what's going on.